I never imagined that embarrassment could be delivered with elegance, adorned in silk and champagne. There I was, seated in the third row at my younger sister's wedding, dressed in the sole formal gown I owned, striving to fit into a crowd of individuals who all appeared to refined, to flawless. My son Luca was next to me, swinging his legs beneath the table, clad in a little suit that cost me 2 paychecks. He seemed so proud to be there. He thought this day would help us reconnect with the family. Perhaps I wished for that too. Viv, my sister, glided through the event like a film star, always radiating that kind of energy. Beautiful, captivating, adored by all, especially our mother. She received the compliments while I received the comparisons. She enjoyed the limelight, while I learned to exist in the shadows. Nevertheless, I attended. I smiled. I applauded during their kiss. I maintained my composure when people inquired, "And you're the older sister? You don't seem to have an 8-year-old. Then, the speeches began. The groom's best friend was first, sharing some mildly amusing stories and eliciting light laughter. Then it was Vivian's turn. I anticipated something heartfelt, maybe about love, or our shared upbringing. I even raised my glass in expectation. I should have known better. She raised her crystal flute and beamed at the crowd. "I want to thank everyone for coming," she started, glowing. "It means everything to have you here. And of course, I want to say something special about my big sister." I turned to Luca and smiled at him. He gazed up at me with excitement. For a fleeting moment, I believed she would say something kind. Vivian continued, "Ul's been such a role model. She's a single mom, strong, independent, and clearly unwanted by anyone else." The room erupted in laughter. My stomach dropped. I thought I misheard her, yet she continued smiling, as if it was the funniest joke ever told. Some guests looked puzzled, but most laughed harder, toasting as if it was all in good fun. I didn't know where to direct my gaze. My heart raced in my ears. Luca tugged at my sleeve, whispering, "Why did she say that about you, Mama?" Before I could respond, my mother chimed in loudly from her table, "She's a used product, but, hey, she still looks good for her age." More laughter, sharper this time. It was the kind of laughter that pierces the skin, the kind that makes it clear everyone sees you differently now, not as a guest, not as family, but as entertainment, as a subject of pity, as a source of shame. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My face burned, yet I refused to let the tears fall. Not in front of my son. Not in front of them. My fingers clenched my napkin under the table, grasping it like a lifeline. I scanned the room, looking for someone, anyone, who might catch my eye and offer a hint of compassion. My grandfather stared down at his plate. My cousin smirked at her phone. Even my uncle, who once told me I reminded him of my late father, didn't lift his gaze. Luca looked bewildered. His little brows knitted together, confused and hurt. That was the part that shattered me. Not the words, not the laughter, not the shame, but the realization that my son was witnessing it all, trying to comprehend why. His mother, the woman who kissed his scraped knees and stayed up late, helping with his math, was being ridiculed by her own family. I wanted to leave. I wanted to take Luca's hand, walk out, and never look back. But something inside me hesitated. I wanted to speak up. I wanted to defend myself, to tell them they didn't understand half of what I had endured, what I had overcome. But my mouth felt dry. My legs trembled beneath the table. Then, before I could act, I heard a chair scraping back. Callum, the groom, Vivian's flawless fiancé, stood up slowly. He didn't appear amused. He didn't look at Vivian. He didn't glance at the guests. His gaze was fixed on me, and something in his expression caused the entire room to freeze. In that moment, I knew something significant was about to unfold. Not a rescue, not a confrontation, but a reckoning. People often believe that being the older sibling means you set the example, that you're admired. But in our family, I was more of a cautionary tale than a role model. I'm Lara, I'm 34, a single mom, and the black sheep of the family. I reside in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of town with my son, Luca. He's 8, the best thing that ever happened to me, and the sole reason I ever re-enter rooms that once made me feel insignificant. I work 2 jobs, mornings at a local cafe and evenings at the front desk of a small hotel. Life isn't glamorous, but it's mine. I prepare pancakes for Luca on Saturdays. I know how to sew patches onto his jeans. And he tells me I'm his superhero. That's all I need to carry on. Yet, being a single mom in my family meant I was the failure. My mother, Judith, ensured I felt that way at every holiday dinner. She values appearances. That's why she tells people Vivian's wedding is a second chance for the family name. Vivian is 5 years younger than me. She's stunning, accomplished, has always been handed everything, and has always known how to make it seem like she worked for it. She's the golden child. Judith adores her. If Vivian sneezed, our mother would bless her with a silk handkerchief. If I fell ill, she'd tell me to take vitamins and stop being dramatic. When I became pregnant with Luca, everything shifted. I was 25, freshly in love with a man who promised to be there for me. By the 5th month, he disappeared, no note, no explanation, just gone. My family didn't ask questions. They didn't offer assistance. They gave me silence, judgment, and a chorus of "I told you so." But I had Luca, and when I held him for the first time, every cruel word they ever uttered became background noise. Still, deep down, I hoped they would eventually see me not just as a single mom, but as someone worthy of love. Maybe that's why, when I received Vivian's wedding invitation, I accepted. Even though I wasn't part of the bridal party, even though my name was misspelled on the RSVP card, even though I had to rent my dress and do my hair in the bathroom mirror while Luca practiced smiling in his little tie, I convinced myself it was for closure, that maybe, just maybe, this was my family's way of extending a quiet olive branch. The venue was stunning. White roses everywhere, gold-accented tableware, a string quartet playing softly in the background. Vivian looked like she belonged in a bridal magazine. She was all smiles and sparkles, soaking in every compliment and camera flash. As she passed me, her smile faltered. "You made it," she said, as if she hadn't expected my presence. She glanced at Luca and added, "He's growing up." No hug, no warmth, just small talk. Then back to the spotlight. Judith didn't acknowledge me at all. She walked past me as if I were one of the servers. But Luca was radiant. He thought the chandelier resembled a spaceship. He whispered that Vivian looked like a princess. And when I saw his joy simply being there, I decided to stay for the reception, even though I could feel that familiar ache of not belonging settling in my chest. I found our table, table 9, near the back by the restrooms. I chuckled to myself. Fitting. We ate our salads. I helped Luca with his tie when he got chocolate mousse on it. I avoided eye contact with my mother and tried not to listen when I heard my name murmured across clinking glasses. Then the speeches began, and I realized this night wouldn't be about family unity or forgiveness. Instead, it was going to be another platform for Vivian to shine, and I was about to become her punchline. The speeches commenced like most wedding speeches do, warm, sugary, slightly rehearsed. Vivian stood up with perfect posture, holding a champagne flute in her impeccably manicured hand. Her dress shimmered under the reception lights, and the room hushed in anticipation. She smiled, pausing just long enough for everyone to settle. "I want to thank all of you for being here," she began. "It's the happiest day of my life, and I'm surrounded by the people who mean everything to me." I observed from the back table, trying to convince myself that I was included in that statement. Luca perched on the edge of his chair beside me, kicking his legs, utterly captivated by the entire fairy tale. Vivian continued, sweetly speaking about her new husband, Callum, about love, timing, and fate. I felt a bit more at ease. Perhaps this speech wouldn't turn cruel after all. Then she shifted. "And of course," she said with a mischievous smile, "I want to give a shout out to my big sister. You've always been such a strong example." The spotlight shifted. I could feel the eyes turning toward me. I straightened my posture. I smiled politely. Vivian continued, her tone light but sharp. "She's the bravest woman I know. She raised a child on her own. No husband, no partner, just her, and whoever was kind enough to babysit." The room chuckled. My stomach tightened. "But seriously," she added, "it's impressive how she's managed. A single mom, unwanted by anyone, yet still shows up." Laughter erupted, loud, unfiltered laughter. I felt my breath leave my body. My cheeks flushed with heat. My hands froze around the napkin in my lap. I glanced at Luca. He was frowning, confused, looking around as if trying to understand why people were laughing at his mother. Then came the most painful part. My mother, Judith, laughed louder than anyone. She leaned toward her table mates and added, just loud enough to carry. "She's a used product, but she still polishes up well." Another wave of laughter, one that didn't bother to disguise its cruelty. My vision blurred momentarily. It felt like a slap, except no one touched me. Everyone just laughed around me as if it were normal. as if mocking a woman who had spent nearly a decade tirelessly raising her son with dignity and warmth was acceptable. I looked down at Luca. His smile had vanished. He leaned into me, whispering, "Why did she say that? What does she mean?" I wanted to answer, but the words escaped me. I couldn't protect him from this moment. I couldn't shield him from how our family perceived me. That kind of pain doesn't hide well. My heart raced. I scanned the room for an exit, for someone who might intervene, someone who might say enough. But no one did. Some people appeared uncomfortable, yet they remained silent, staring at their glasses, their plates, their phones. Even Grandpa Norman, who used to call me his little lion when I was young, avoided my gaze. He was present but not with me at that moment. I felt utterly alone again. The thing is, I could have endured it if it were just me. I had spent years swallowing that kind of treatment. I could have smiled, taken Luca by the hand, and left quietly with my head held high. But witnessing the confusion in my son's eyes, seeing him grappling with why the people clapping and toasting were suddenly laughing at his mother, cracked something open within me. I stood, not because I knew what I wanted to say, not because I wanted to make a scene. I just needed to escape that room. I needed fresh air. I needed to breathe without choking on the shame they were throwing at me. I pushed my chair back, my hands trembling. And then, from the head table, another chair scraped against the floor. Callum, the groom, stood up. He looked pale. His jaw was tense. He took the microphone from Vivan without asking. The room fell silent, as if the temperature dropped. More laughter, no more whispers, just stillness. I knew whatever was coming next wasn't part of the plan. Callum stood with one hand resting on the table and the other gripping the microphone. His eyes were locked on me, not on Vivan, not on Judith, not on the laughing crowd, but on me. For a moment, I thought maybe he'd make another joke, smooth things over, say something charming to diffuse the tension. That's what people usually do in my family, sweep it under the rug. Pretend it didn't happen. Call it humor. Call it tradition. But that's not what he did. He didn't smile. He didn't laugh. His expression was tight with something I couldn't quite place, anger, perhaps, but deeper, like disappointment mixed with disbelief. Before he could speak, I pushed my chair in and reached for Luca's hand. I was prepared to leave quietly with grace. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry or break. I had done it before. I could do it again. But as I turned to step away, Callum's voice rang out low, firm, calm. "Lara, don't go." That stopped me. Everyone turned towards him. Whispers flowed through the tables like a breeze, rustling dry leaves. Vivan stiffened. Judith narrowed her eyes. The DJ reached for the volume controls but paused when Callum raised a hand. He didn't look at anyone except me. "I can't pretend I'm okay with what just occurred," he stated. "I won't stand up here and allow that kind of cruelty to masquerade as comedy." The room held its breath. Callum stepped out from behind the table and slowly walked forward, not rushing. Each step seemed deliberate, as if he were pushing through the weight of the room. He halted near our table. Me, Luca, the now cold salad plates, and looked directly at the guests. "I've heard a lot about family over the past year while planning this wedding," he began, "about appearances, tradition, loyalty. But what I just witnessed wasn't family. That was mockery disguised as celebration." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some people glanced at Judith, while others stared at their drinks, but no one spoke. He turned to Vivan. "You mocked your sister for being a single mother, for raising a child without support. You laughed, and worse, you made her son watch it happen." Vivan opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Callum didn't wait for her reply. She didn't ask to be put in that position. But she did show up today. She sat in the back. She smiled. She brought her son to witness your special day. And you turned that into a joke. I had never seen Vivan look so small until that moment. Callum continued addressing the room. "Lara didn't stand here to defend herself. She didn't seek sympathy. She's never needed a stage, but I won't remain silent. Because if I'm about to marry into a family that views cruelty as humor and shame as tradition, then I need to reconsider what kind of man I want to be." A gasp rippled through the guests. A woman at the next table whispered, "Is this real?" Someone dropped a fork. Luca looked up at me with wide eyes. I was at a loss for what to do. I had come, expecting to endure the evening, not to be defended, especially not like this, in front of everyone. Callum glanced down at my son and gave him the softest nod. "Your mom's the strongest person in this room. Don't forget that." He turned back to the crowd one last time. I think I've seen enough. With that, he set the microphone down, walked past Vivon without another glance, and headed straight out the door. I stood there, frozen, holding Luca's hand. The music didn't resume. The crowd didn't move. It felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. The fairy tale had shattered. But for the first time in a long while, I wasn't the one left broken. The moment Callum exited the reception hall, it was as though someone flicked a switch. No one applauded. No one cheered. The only sound was the soft hum of the air conditioning and the clink of a single spoon hitting a glass. The crowd was frozen, eyes darting between me, Vivon, and the door Callum had just vanished through. Vivon stood at the head table, as if she had just been struck. Her flawless posture crumbled. Her shoulders sagged under the weight of what had just transpired. She looked around, but the faces staring back at her were no longer smiling. Some appeared shocked. Some looked embarrassed. A few looked angry, not at Callum, but at her. Judith was the first to break the silence. She stood abruptly, her chair screeching across the polished floor. "What an ungrateful boy," she snapped. "He embarrassed you in front of everyone. Typical, just like your sister's selfish." But her voice didn't carry like it usually did. The power she wielded over the room had evaporated. Her words fell flat. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to shrink under her voice. I turned to Luca. He looked up at me, uncertain. "Are we leaving?" he asked quietly. "Yes, baby," I replied, brushing his hair back. "We're going home." I stood tall as I took his hand and began walking toward the exit. People parted. As I passed, some avoided my gaze. Others appeared as if they wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Halfway to the door, I heard someone call my name. "Lara." I turned. It was my grandfather, Norman Pale, eyes rimmed with red. He rose slowly and stepped toward me. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice soft and shaky. "I should have stopped it years ago." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I didn't hate him for not defending me. I understood what silence costs some people. I had lived it. I wasn't angry, but I also wasn't carrying their guilt anymore. Outside, the air was cool and crisp. Luca squeezed my hand. "Is the wedding over?" he asked. I looked down at him. "Yeah," I said, smiling. "I think it ended exactly how it needed to." We drove home in silence. The radio off, just the sound of the tires and the rhythm of Luca tapping his fingers on the armrest. That night, I tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and lingered by his door a little longer than usual. He didn't ask any more questions. He didn't need to. The next morning, I awoke to a dozen missed calls from unknown numbers, distant cousins, and even a couple of guests I barely knew. I ignored them all. My phone buzzed again, a text from a friend who had attended. Subscribe for part 2.